if you could take a moment and go to thegrowingbanddirector.com to give at least $5 or $3 a month, and it helps the content continue to be created for you to help our profession grow. Let's go back to our scheduled episode.
Anyway, today we have Kyle Smith. Not only is Kyle Smith the director of bands at Westbrook High School in Maine, but he is also the Growing Band Directors podcast host, which is a valuable resource for music educators at all levels. The Growing Band Director podcast leads a vibrant community of over 4,000 members. The podcast and its accompanying Facebook group offer practical advice and resources for band directors, regardless of experience level, and I can attest personally. Each episode dives into topics in several areas of the band and has fantastic guests. With a practical and engaging approach, Kyle and his guests share real-world strategies, inspiring stories, and actionable items to help band directors elevate their programs. It is a must listen for anyone passionate about shaping the future of music education. So without any further ado, I'm very excited to have another host. Please welcome Mr. Kyle Smith.
How are you?
Oh, wow. Listen to the sound of that microphone. That is amazing, Mr. Smith.
Thanks so much.
How are you today?
It's nice being a podcast host. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think it's great because I hear you so really good. But let's share some commonality before we get started. We were talking. So by the way, we have never actually met for more than like 10 minutes. So this is I love getting a chance to meet guests, but we found a common thing. We both live super close to Portland. How many minutes away from Portland are you?
About 3. Well, if I hit a golf ball, it's more like, like a driver in a 3 wood. But to drive there, it's more like 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to hit the lake because there's the river right there in my Portland. The problem is our Portlands are all about 3,000 miles apart, come to find out. So I think it's super fun. But anyway, I just had to throw that in there. So anyway, please welcome Kyle Smith. And let's talk about your podcast. Tell us a little bit about your podcast, because if my listeners have never been there, you should go.
Yeah, thanks so much. The Growing Band Director podcast is really just about my quest to be a better band director. And, I was having discussions with Jeff Smith, a great friend of mine who passed away recently, and many other amazing band directors, many with experience. And we're having these conversations just in person, at Jazz Allstate and all these different places. And I just love talking shop with band. And then I thought at one point, I said, you know what? There's probably a lot of teachers, experienced and maybe not experienced, who would love to be a fly on the wall and hear the things we just talked about. Because David, if you and I sit and talk about band, you have many experiences. I have many experiences. There's some things we're going to say and we're going to inherently understand, but somebody who's been teaching less or has had different experiences may not understand that. So, I also love podcasts in general. So the ability to kind of go, hey, let's just record these and put them out for people was really all it's about.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I have a student teacher this semester, so
Me too.
I'm living the. Yeah. Oh, congratulations! Hey, I should share my document with you. I did my master's thesis on student teaching, believe it or not. Anyway, it's kind of funny that you say that, because it strikes right at my heart, which is you forget how much you know after you've been doing this for a while, and I think that's you said it. For me, it was like when I first started doing jazz in college. They would start talking about jazz, and I would just go, I have not an understanding of the words that just came out of your mouth. But after doing it for a few years, then I followed every conversation. And that's what I think, your podcasts are great, because you've got one of the things I noticed, by the way, because I do creep your Facebook all the time. It's one of my hobbies. And somebody put up there, they were looking for a sheet on Brace for Impact or something like that. And I was like,
yeah, I don't think nobody's put it up. I don't think. Excelsior Music Publishing is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. Excelsior Music Publishing provides new music for concert band, jazz ensemble, solo and ensemble, and books for all levels and occasions, including a specially curated and robust selection of music for your contest and festival performances. A variety of overtures, marches, and lyric works included on numerous state lists await. Select music that's perfect for your contest and festival needs at excelsiamusic.com. That's EXCELCIA music.com. Do you spend valuable time all year correcting your students' hand position instead of focusing on the music? Thumb Gummy solves that. These simple, cost-effective teaching aids fit on trumpets and trombones to guide the right hand into proper playing position, reducing tension, improving form, and giving tactile feedback so students can focus on playing, not adjusting. It's easy to use, comfortable, and designed by teachers and players for beginners as well as older students. Join thousands already seeing the difference, and keep an eye out for our new clarinet thumb rest coming soon. Visit thumbgummy.com to learn more. That's thumbgummy.com. If you're a band or orchestra director looking to streamline your rehearsals and help your students take ownership of their intonation, you need to know about Tuner Caddy. It was invented by Mark Casperson, a veteran band director with 38 years in the classroom. Like lots of us, he was tired of drop tuners, scattered materials, and constant reminders. So he created a solution, and after 57 prototypes, the Tuner Caddy was born. It's been used by some of the most respected programs in the country. Mouse Middle School, Cooper Junior High School, Arbor Creek and Creek Valley, Rushing Middle School, Stiles and Grisham Middle Schools, and the Henry Middle School Band, which was a 2024 CCC Honor Band of Texas. These aren't just good groups, they're the best of the best. And when they step on stage at Midwest, TMEA, or Music for All, many of them have Tuner Caddy right there with them. It's been used by university music ed professors to help train future teachers because it works. The classic fits most stands and includes a pencil holder. Student Pro is slim, binder ready, and magnetized, and the new Tuner Metronome combo transposes and has a 6-foot mic, ideal for students and directors alike. You can get them at tunercaddy.com, Music and Arts, Sweetwater, Premier Music Teaching Aids, and local retailers. They even offer grant writing support for educators. Check them out.
You know what's funny? I should probably do it because I think I might have it. Because
Yes,
I was thinking about this. I did it on my first concert with my, because it's like a freshman band. You never know whether or not they can either finger the note or if they're professionals, and you kind of get all levels with freshman band. So I think to myself, but that's one of those strategies that I was thinking to myself, oh yeah, I should go on your Facebook and post what I'm doing. Whoever put that out there, is there a resource? I think that's great, but that's what your podcast is doing. You are definitely connecting us, and not just in any specific area, middle school, elementary school, high school. It's just some great resources. But let's talk a little bit about, I know you were at the Midwest Clinic. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what that experience was like. And yeah, let's just start with that.
But real quick before we do that, I had just a couple thoughts, and I'm a trumpet player, so I have to write things down. First of all, I didn't realize you are so experienced as the pedagogy of having student teachers. So we need to schedule a time to do a podcast for my podcast about how to do student teachers. Let's do it. Okay.
Thumbs up.
And the practical thing on my podcast is, I have a 14, some days 17-minute commute to school, and I don't want to listen to music because I've been listening to music and I want to just listen to a podcast. And if I can't help my band get better in that 14 minutes, then I'm going to shut it off. So to me, it's kind of designed for that band director, either on a walk or more likely in a car to or from school, who can just get a little nugget for their band. So you mentioned companion guides. Shout out to 2 people, Tiffany Hitz. I forget, she's at Robinson Middle School in Virginia. And I had her on at one point. I forget the episode number 100 and something. And she was all about the companion guide, or the one sheet. And we talked about, how to create them and all this. And then the other shout out was actually to Tyler Grant, who I had on at one point. But Tyler now provides for all of his new pieces, as far as I know, on his website, a free companion guide. So if you buy the piece, you can instantly go and get the companion guide. So I want to get those out, so I didn't forget to say that. You want to talk Midwest now?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit of Midwest. Although I want to say, we could do this all day. We could just keep adding to each other's conversation. So it's funny that you mentioned the companion guides. We had Dave Coons on last year. And one of the things he talked about with me recently is tech sheets. And that has been, it's kind of like the companion guide, but like I've been working on those, it's weird. It's the weekend. What am I doing? Working on band stuff. But those tech sheets are also super good, which is where you take common themes and you write them out for every instrument. So you're spending way less, you're rehearsing way less in terms of what you're teaching. That way nobody's sitting there. So let's work this flute theme here, but here tubas you have it, or let's work this trombone theme here. But that's one of those things that those tech sheets provide. And that's why I said, I think I'm going to I would dream of having those sheets available on every piece. Cause that's what I've been working on this weekend. I use Logic Pro, and I've been making testing documents for my students. So they have a chance to go, okay, I need to hear the first trumpet part on this piece of music. On your marks, get set, play. I have my resource guide, so I don't have to, I can hear it versus see it. Just a lot of those things. Again, pedagogical ideas that we get from listening to each other, or just, ideas. All right.
And
I digress.
And I find that you can, anybody with a knowledge of notation software can create one. It just takes, you have to have a couple of weeks of planning, right? Like you can't be doing it, or you got to go like, oh, we're going to need it. What do I pull out? What do I write out? All that. Tech sheets. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and the neat thing that I've learned though is if I do them on Logic Pro and I play them in on my piano, which is sitting right there, 9 times out of 10, it just pops out on the music. I don't have to notate it in. I can just pull it up from the MIDI into the
Hmm.
file, and there it is. Or I can just make corrections. So that's my little tidbit of advice out there. Because I was talking to my friend at a local band. She was a little enamored with my sheets, and I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of a pianist, so I kind of have an unfair advantage. But if notation software is if you don't play piano, notation software is the way to go.
Plus, you can't write them
All
in a
right.
study. You can't write them in a study hall if you're on a piano.
Oh no. Well, I can't. I can. I also teach music production, so I have my little studio set up with the little keyboard. I can just run in there, and I'm not going to, but I could do it if I really wanted
So
to.
I guess why I said that is because this year I actually have to teach a study hall in like a sophomore English classroom. I have to go to
Oh
that
my
study
goodness.
hall and sit there. It's just the way it's working out this year. And so yeah,
Isn't that pure excitement at the pedagogical level?
holy smokes, good thing they're nice kids because it's just yeah.
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 Can I say I shout out to my students in my advisory. They are like the best students. And like I am so lucky to have a set of students where I just go, thank you for whoever put these random kids in this class because they are fantastic. So shout
Yes.
out to those kids. All right. We digress again. Back to Midwest. So tell us about your
Good speech.
experiences and maybe some of the podcasts you did. And that way we can kind of point people to where we need to go.
Holy smoke. So I did a series of, I did a series of 20 episodes that were not planned.
Oh,
But the way it worked out was a sponsor of mine is Excelsior Music and Larry Clark, who runs that company. And I basically reached out this summer and just said, hey, would you be interested in having, I know you have a large booth. Would you be interested in having me there? And he graciously accepted and asked me to come in. So I really was just able to come into one of the hubs. Randall Standards Music was right there, and there's just tons of traffic. And I had that, as band directors, we always do. Yeah, that's me interviewing Larry. And we always have that nightmare of, okay, no one's coming to the concert. It's going to be terrible. That whole band director thing. Well, this was me on a podcast setting, right? So like nothing's planned for 3 days. I'm just going to stand here and, have nobody to talk to. But it turned out to be 3 full days of talking. And, Larry Clark was in there. There was Tyler Arcari was part of it. I got to meet Doug Beach. Doug Beach is one of my heroes.
goodness.
Because he wrote
Mine too.
he wrote Fat Cat. And Fat Cat is one of the greatest grade 2 jazz band pieces you can ever imagine. So, I think it ended up being episodes number, I have like a Rain Man type brain when it comes to these episode numbers. My wife sort of makes fun of me. 223 to 232 or something. And there's just a bunch of these, Travis Weller and Jerry Tolson, lots of people were on. So the picture that people are seeing here is me talking with Larry Clark. And what's hard for me is like I typically have an agenda, like because I'm a trumpet player and I don't want to go, okay, I don't know what else to ask. So I tend to, have this agenda going. But for these, we didn't have that. It was like, hey, nice to meet you. Let's talk. So it was a good stretch for me. Very grateful.
See, maybe you're stuck with me. I'm a woodwind player. I'm a sax player in general. I like the because I can just go on my non sequitur and just go for days and let it follow. So I think you and I are funnier in that difference. I can take any conversation and go with it and maybe even actually think I know something about it. That's the funny thing. Oh, Cynthia Ray Plank. Sound is excellent, by the way. That's one of our guests. Cynthia Ray teaches here in Portland.
Hi, Cynthia.
Oregon.
Great
jazz teacher, not great jazz teacher, just a great teacher overall. So anybody who checks out Cynthia Ray Plank, you should find her school. She does amazing work at her school.
Can I request something from Cynthia if she's still listening? Is that
acceptable? Oh, sure. Well, yeah, go for it.
I wonder if Cynthia could
put in you're getting talked about.
Could she put in the comment here like a name of a jazz band piece or a name of a concert band piece that she really loves right now? I think that would be cool.
I would love to.
If that happens.
That would be super cool.
I don't know if we have the technology, but that's pretty cool.
We do. If it's actually in the private chat on the second button
called
comment.
Do I need to look at that?
To my studio audience, we are nerding out. And so yeah, you can. There's like the little comments. Oh, there it is. And she said, sure.
Beautiful.
So there it is. So she said, sure. So anyway, back to see, this is going to be like this all day, I think. But yeah, so what did you learn from doing the random broadcasts at Midwest? I know you got a chance to talk to some people, but did you get any tidbits? Do you do what I do and think that this is like free professional development every single time you do a podcast?
100%. My hope is, we're talking right now, David, and when I go to my class this week, I'm hoping to do something better. through your knowledge, we are working St. Louis Blues. Is that an arrangement or
Woohoo.
the original Ellington WC Handy one? I'm curious.
Cynthia teaches middle school, by the way. So,
Okay.
um,
I think
like
that's a Robert Wood.
here's my example of how this works. So here's a great arrangement of St. Louis Blues. If you haven't and done it, check out Alan Carter's arrangement. It is one of the most fantastic arrangements out there. It is very different. Matter of fact, I was thinking about doing it this year, but it's probably on my thing for next year. But what are your thoughts on St. Louis Blues?
To be honest, I haven't done that arrangement. It's funny though, like doing standard tunes is 95% of my jazz curriculum. Like we do standard tunes, maybe new arrangements sometimes, but I just don't have much of a place for tunes that are not somewhere in the historical jazz repertoire because there's so much that we can teach them through that. The program I have, I'm able to kind of get 20 to 22 tunes within the year with the jazz ensemble that I work with. They have to be very different levels. Some are for like an elementary school Christmas thing, Who Let the Elves Out, if you're looking for that. Some are like summertime, sometimes the fair, sometimes the festival. So, I love using great tunes, whether the originals or the arrangements.
Here's something for you. So I'm going to a jazz festival in mid-March. You have to have 6 tunes prepared because what they do, and I know, ready? Oh, Orange Sherbet. That's a cool
yes.
Sammy, yes. Here's what's scary about that festival. You go to the festival and they bring out this large dice and they roll it. And whatever rolls, you have to play that tune and then you can program around it. So you have to have 6 tunes ready to go. And so the last time I went, which is a couple years ago, it's Clackamas Jazz Festival in Oregon City, Oregon. And I'm looking forward to it, Lars, if you're listening. But they just roll the dice. And that's one of those things I believe pedagogically is, sometimes, as a jazz person, we get caught up in teaching our kids those 3 pieces of music, lather, rinse. And for me, it's 3 or 4, depending on the festival series. But, getting your kids to read better, getting your kids to play more music, having multiple charts. Think about having 6 charts ready to go. See, Clackamas is a great show. I'll be there. Hopefully you'll be there, Cynthia. But it's one of those things that I believe in is that, hey kids, it doesn't matter whether I passed out the music on Monday or I passed out the music in October. It's always ready to go. And you have to, every piece of music should be ready to go because, oh, look, there's the goal, practice, and off you go.
One thing that I find is just key is just having more performances. At one point with our school, I had the typical 3 months in between performances in all the groups.
Mm-hmm.
And you hit that rut of like, what are we doing here? Why is this still a problem? This shouldn't be hard. It's just clearly the kids weren't locked in at that point. So then now that I'm kind of more of the collegiate, I'm not saying level, but I'm saying performance schedule, like every 5 to 6 weeks of rehearsals, here comes a gig. I just find the kids learn it so much faster. So I love having that 6 tunes ready. You're speaking my language.
More festivals should. I agree. More festivals should include sight reading. Back in the day when I was in black and white, that's the way I like to put it. I think every festival had sight reading in it. I think I started my career. You couldn't go to a festival without sight reading in the books. Oh, wait a minute. That would be how Cynthia and I met. I was her sight reading judge, which reminds me, Cynthia, you have 5 minutes to tune the timpani. For some reason at the jazz festival, it had a statement about tuning the timpani. So I kept going with it because I always read the script that I'm given.
Strike that from the handbook. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think it was one size fits all. But, thinking about going back to the podcast, because of course I could digress all day long. Talk about maybe, things that you're getting from the podcast personally and things that your guests, what's the difference between what you're getting and what your guests are getting?
That's a great question because usually what I'm getting is from those guests. So usually when I have somebody on, like, for example, we talked about how we're going to find a time for you to be on. I'm going to learn about how you do student teachers, right? So I would like to think that in our conversation, I would come up with some things as well that you would learn and that people would learn. But mainly it's about the guests. I've just found, when I started this, I didn't know a lot of people outside of Maine. Maine has what we like to say 7 people in a moose, right? We got like 1.3 million people. I mean, it's like the smallest state when it comes to population. So I didn't know many people around the country. Through this podcast, I've been able to meet people from tiny programs, from enormous programs that I've known for decades. And now it turns out they're just humans who do the same things that I do, just in a different place. So I've just found that there's like 3 huge key areas that we try to hit on. And if you can excel in all 3 of these things as a band director, then you're going to have a pretty smoking program. Repertoire, right? Are you choosing great repertoire? Do you have a knowledge of great repertoire? Pedagogy, obviously, like, do you know how to tune the band and make things happen? And lastly, relationships, not in that order, right? That, because you can be a great conductor and teacher and choose great music, but if there's no trust with the kids and all that, so those relationships are really huge. And I just found that teachers who have good programs do those things. Doesn't matter if it's in Kansas or Indiana or Chicago or Maine.
So my turn to reflect back, because you said 2 things that hit near and dear to my heart. You said small programs, we all do the same thing. And that's what I think at the heart is of all this. Because I'm thinking about, those if we all think major programs, we say marching band, jazz band, concert band, we're all going to have programs in our head and have some similarity. And a lot of us who don't teach at those larger programs, we look up to them, so to speak. But I think some people don't realize, I was thinking about this the other day. There are some people that do more fantastic work at smaller and small rural programs that you will never know, because they don't have access to the same type of resources. B, they're in a school where maybe they only have 25 people in the band because there's only 70 people in the entire school. Yeah. And we need to, as a music community, start focusing on more than just the performance artist, because I think there's a lot of pedagogy out there, because that was the second part we're going to get to. I think there's a lot of pedagogy out there we haven't discovered because we're focusing on those with resources. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, because by absolutely all means. But then on the side of the pedagogy, this is kind of like where the start of my podcast came, because you said, if your band plays in tune, well, this is where mine comes in. Is it my responsibility? And this is open-ended, you don't have to answer. Is it my responsibility for the kids to play in tune, or is it the student's responsibility? And if you say the second, how do we make that happen? And that's how this came to be. My band played, we did pep band on Friday night, and I will forever not forget this Friday night, because Mr. Duarte did something bad. He got so caught up in his order of things, he forgot to my list. I just forgot to put tuning in there, and somehow forgot that we didn't tune. So the band started playing on Friday night. I'm like, well, this is going to be an experience, and the Star Spangled Banner is about 5 tunes away. And so on my own thing, it's because I didn't put the pedagogy back on the kids for that evening, where this is the things that we're supposed to do, because I believe in student-centered band programs. And I think that's my way of saying I'm not at that program where I have an assistant director. I don't have a staff. I don't have people teaching my kids sectionals. I don't have private lesson teachers. I have me, myself, and a student teacher. And so, like I said, and so some of those things that came out from learning is where, these podcasts have been super great, because I get more and more practical ideas from them.
The podcast world just opens up the world. You just get to learn from people. I got an email, and I forget the guy's name, but he said, I just want to thank you for doing all these podcasts. I live in, get this, Auckland, New Zealand. And there's like a bunch of us who listen, and we love it, and we talk about it. And there's not a lot of professional development where we are. And this is a way for us to help our bands get better. And I was floored by that. I was like, New Zealand? Like, we forget that, like, this goes out everywhere, right? Like, including New Zealand.
Right. It's a terrible drive. I'm just throwing that out there.
That's Doug Beach, by the way, the picture that's right there. That's the famous Doug Beach.
He helped shape my learning how to teach my jazz band when I first started, because we had all those tunes that he was just cranking out, Doug Beach. And I still probably have a bunch in my, I have to go check my boxes. It's half of it's Doug Beach, George Shutak tunes. And so
yep.
what a great source of inspiration for all of us. But with, back to the side, who's getting more from these podcasts, in your opinion, yourself or your guest or your listeners, I appreciate that feedback, though, because we do forget, because you said it, you go to these things and you think, no one's listening and no one's watching. And then ever so often you get these kind of reminders that we're all listening and we're all watch. Oh, Cynthia Ray came back. There's her third. That one I'm not familiar with. Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah, it's like a grade 4 B flat blues, but it's got a pretty cool, I think it's an a cappella soli in it, if I'm not mistaken.
She can type in there everything that in the world about it. And We can learn from the process. But also maybe talk about your Facebook page. Maybe talk about some of your favorite podcasts or some of the memories of your podcasts that are out there for people to listen to.
It's hard. Like, there's so many. When people say, "What's your favorite podcast?"
Yeah,
honestly, like, some will stick out. Like when I got to meet with Peter Boonshaft, like that was really cool.
yeah.
Sometimes there's a name that people know. Oh, how'd you get that? I just asked. Pretty simple. But so there's so many that I don't want to be overwhelming. That we really try to do beginning band as much as we can.
Mhm.
If people have a pen and they want to write a couple numbers down, 103 with Lori Zentz. She's a fantastic middle school band director in Florida. Um, a plug for my wife, who's a fantastic middle school director. She's done a couple episodes with me. 171 was all about how to set up your beginners. Like, how do you start from we haven't even introduced instruments yet to now? How do we really get our beginning band to sound great? Robert Grogan was on episode 68 with classroom management. He's from Cobb County. I forget the name of the school, but it's in Georgia. Fantastic teacher. That's been one of the most popular ones. We had Scott Rush on this summer, episode 187, all about the habits of a successful musician, I think we called it. But it's just a great topic from one of the giants in our field. And I'll just put another plug. I mean, there's so many that I could mention. We have a ton of repertoire podcasts where we basically say, okay, let's talk about grade 2 jazz band festival repertoire. And then I'll say, here's 9 charts that fit like a first, second, third tune if you were to go to a festival. And I'll have somebody like the famous Terry White, who happens to be a good friend of mine. Or I'm planning one next month with Julius Tolentino in Newark, where we sit down and we say, okay, let's talk about Nasty Bit of Blues. We mention about why it's good, and then we'll listen or watch the score and sound. So people can actually like be checking out, oh, I love that tune. Let me write it down. A lot of people who have feedback are really about those repertoire podcasts because we're always looking for that next piece. Whether it's this year or next year, we're always looking for something that might fit our kids.
Oh my gosh. It's funny you say repertoire. I think, I live my life trying to find good music. And so like I'm finally convinced at my age that I don't know anything. And so I constantly just ask people for their repertoire and then find out. But here's the question I always like to ask: why? Why would I need to do this piece? I think that's what it kind of forgets. Um, what, what, um, what does it offer my band? What does it offer me? Because I think that's repertoire is always hard because sometimes I pick a piece of music simply because I like it. I had one pop up on my Apple Music the other day, speaking of driving to work, and it was funny because I was actually listening to the piece of music that I was playing, and then Apple Music decides I need to listen to something else, and so after it was done and I wasn't paying attention, this piece of music popped up, and then I'm like on my car with my hands as fast as I can, trying to figure out what is this piece of music. And it was something I had never heard before. I emailed the composer who lives in Europe. And he emailed me back this morning at 2:30 in the morning because I'm trying to get my hands on the chart because I hear things in that chart that I want to hear. I hear doubles. I hear kids, I hear flute. I hear chords. I hear all these things that I want to work on. And so that's part of those things that I really like is what does that repertoire, not only is what is good repertoire, because that is important, but what does this repertoire have to offer? And that's why I think that, you talk about it in terms of like doing it with somebody, because you might say something that I don't hear or I don't see simply by hearing about that. And that's maybe what these podcasts do is we might say something that somebody hears that we just think is insignificant. And so it just might be one of those things that catches on.
Yeah, I mean, and even sometimes you hear something that you already do, right? It's not new to
Right.
you, but you go, you know what? That's right. I still do that, and I do it, and I should continue to do it because it's good. So even just the reminder, when it comes to the programming aspect of things, I try to, and I know this is maybe a little overstated, but I try to make an exact customized program for every concert we're doing for each one of my bands.
Mhm.
Like it needs to fit them really well to the point that let's take Amazing Grace, Frank DeKelly. I've never
Mhm.
performed that with one of my bands. I've had it, I've known it for 25 years, but I need the point where it fits them in so many different ways, including the lack of percussion, including a great alto solo in the chamber, like all the things. And so often I just go, you know what? It's a great piece of music, but it's not one of the 4 we should be doing right now. And that's what's so hard, is having these like high standards for the kids. Like I don't want to just pull, oh, I like El Relicario, let's just do it. Well, what if they can't, it's like, does it really
Right.
matter first if you like it? Like, you should like it because you can be inspired by it and inspire the kids through it. But it's got to first be the curriculum for them.
You know what's funny though? I was just thinking about that because you can see there's one of my scores sitting right there because I've been on the piano the whole day trying to play some of this. At what point when
Is
you
that
pick
is that
repertoire,
AO by Katash
yes, it
Goldberg?
is. Yeah, it is.
I see it. All right.
See, I knew if somebody would saw the cover, they'd recognize what it is.
Yep.
But my point to it is like, you don't know. I'm, based upon, did I pick this by sound? Did I pick this by pedagogy? And then sometimes, do you ever have that worry in your head? I overpicked, or the worst one, which happened to me on one of my pieces on my first concert, I underpicked. There's never a magic formula for picking some of that repertoire stuff.
Yeah,
But then
you
it comes
you can overpick on a piece, or like you might push them with a piece, but don't push them on all of them. They have to push in different ways.
no. And that's one of those things that, how do you learn these things? And that's why I said your podcast, awesome. But here's another one for you. Here's another bubble thought. And I don't know if this is a hot take. That was for Patrick, our producer back there. This might be a hot take. I've always dreamed of going to a festival, and instead of getting judges' comments, because always, it's some of those times that when you get judges' comments, sometimes like, yeah, I already know that because I got my band to where I'm at. It's like, but I'm looking for more than that. I was thinking about doing like an ESPN broadcast where you get the judges around a microphone and then they can kind of talk across, they could talk across and like really comment on the band in live feed. And I bet you would get a complete different set of comments. Well, how would you fix that piece, John? What do you think about that? Well, those flutes in that upper register. Sure. I'm just throw, some of those things.
That is a fantastic idea. I'm going to let that marinate for a while. I'm judging at a festival in a couple months. I might have to bring that up to the people running it. Like wow.
Do you know what I'm saying? Because
yes.
One time I got, your piccolo super sharp on that F. I'm like, well, thank you for that. And she knows that. And I have tuned that. And thank you. And I've came up with my resources and I thought we had it. But you know what I'm saying? At some point, are the judges talking to you or are they talking to the students? And maybe we need a little bit more of live action talking so that we can get a little bit more realistic feedback. Because as I do, when you're judging, you're responding to the moment and it's just you in your head and the thoughts. And sometimes you're going on a thought and something goes by, and it's not that you missed it, it's just that you're still trying to articulate some of those things. Kind of like these podcasts. I'm still trying to articulate some of the things you say, but then we'll start talking and then I'll be like, what just happened? Where did we go? What were we talking about? I was still on Midwest. Like, I think we were talking about Midwest at some point and then it went.
That's a great comment. I'm really lucky. The concert band festival we have in Maine that we go to has that 30-minute clinic afterwards, which helps with a lot of that stuff. But I love that multiple people on one judge's tape concept. I think that has legs for sure. I have a story that at one point I did a conductor collegium. I don't even know what the word collegium means, but that's the one. That's the one that's at University of North Texas that they do with the Wind Symphony. Is it the Wind Symphony at UNT? Is that what that's called? Yeah. So. And it's June, so my wife and I go down, and let's talk about that.
There's a comment from Cynthia. Yeah, I wish one judge would just address the conducting. And it's funny that actually I just saw that in Arizona, which I hate to say is very hot. Not really. When we used to go, I can't remember which festival, whether it was the fall ensemble festival or it was state, they would have one person in the back with a camera facing you, and then there was somebody on the side just to address conducting. So that is some of those things that are different from festival to festival. And then, here's some thoughts. I don't know why we got on these tangents, but festivals offer different things, and some of them are competitive in nature. Some of them are educational in nature, and some of them are a combination of the two. Some are competition for ratings, some are a competition for placement. But I think sometimes we need to define what we're doing at those festivals or why we're going to those festivals. So, if conducting is important to a festival, it would sure be nice to find festivals. How about a list of festivals, by state that this is what they addressed ahead of time, so we can kind of pick, like, for example, go back to that Clackamas Festival. There is a reason I'm going to that festival, and it's because what that festival has to offer. Um, and so think about this. Maybe more festivals should add the conducting feature. Maybe in jazz festivals. Here's one. Here, you ready for a hot take? You ready for a hot
Ready?
take? Because I'm
I'm
on
ready.
this one. Okay. So I went back to teach. I was an administrator for 11 years, and I went back to teaching after the 11-year break, which, by the way, don't do that during COVID, because you end up having to learn how to teach all over again after you haven't done it for, well, yeah, a long time. But when you're talking jazz, this is like one of those things. Which is more, and I'm not asking, this is rhetorical, so you don't have to answer. Which is more important, having a great soloist that plays better than everyone in the state, or having an ensemble that can play? Because I don't think that question ever gets answered depending on what you have. So like as you're building a program and you don't have that superstar soloist, because it kind of takes a while to build some of that stuff. What are you getting from the jazz festival? Because that's just to tangent. That's what I believe in. Is this festival working on my ensemble so my kids understand that I know what I'm teaching and trying to pick up what I don't? And then when it comes to soloist, either, it goes back to what's the intent of the festival. Is it for the students or is it for the teacher? And I sometimes don't think we really define that.
I have a thought, which for a trumpet player is nice.
Oh my gosh, we should take a moment and
Yeah,
observe
take a moment.
this.
Whether it's a jazz festival or a concert band festival, any kind of festival, I think it needs to have three things to be the experience, at least that I want for my kids. One, the kids are performing. Their performance, whether or not there's numbers or not, they are there with a set and they're performing. Number two, they are getting feedback from professionals, right? I think that's important too. Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
on Symphony Hall in Boston or at some high school in the gym, doesn't matter. Get some feedback, ideally in person. The third one is that they get to watch, ideally, professional music as part of it. So they're sitting there being inspired by a jazz ensemble or by a professional soloist, or at the very least, they're watching the other bands from other towns because they've been to that town. They've been to that town to go skiing, but they never think, well, that band has that band is from that same town, and wow, they played this piece. It's not even that they're good or bad. It's just like the opening up the world to them. So I think the festivals, if people are running them or looking for things, needs to have that. You have to be able to watch other groups, ideally better groups than yours, perform and get good feedback.
Here's my hot take on that. Is like, I was thinking about this because I got registered for my concert band festivals finally, and I have one on a Saturday, and then there's one that's only, again, this is the whole we band directors, I'm saying, value your time, whether you do weekends or not, it's up to you. But I'm just saying, this one festival is on a Friday, Saturday. The other festival is only on a Wednesday, Thursday. We talk about watching bands. How many, and I don't know if this happens to you, how many times are you at the mercy of your transportation department and what they can offer? And that has been the bane of my weekday existence, because I believe that I learned by watching other bands. And if I hear you talk about that alto saxophone in Amazing Grace, if I can hear somebody do that, it's when do I get to believe as a student that I can do that once I've heard it? But if I've never heard it, I'm never going to know that inspiration is out there. Or that jazz soloist, oh my gosh, this kid's playing the heck out of these changes. And whoa, where did that bebop lick come from? Meanwhile, my students are like, what note is that? I'm like, no. It's not the note. Let's, this is that pedagogical side of festivals, of like, how do you get to go listen? And so, some of those options are, you can go on a weekend and then you're not worried about transportation, and then you can do some of that thing. And my gosh, you say, how many jazz festivals or concert band festivals do you have a spot where it's okay, at this time so and so is going to play, make sure all of your kids are there? And that is some of those things that you have to research. And I understand, like, if you have to go to your regional festival for your area so you can qualify for state level, I understand all of that. But I'm talking about, what about doing more festivals on the outside that teach? That's why I'm excited, because I have registered my band for the Music for All festival up here in Vancouver. By the way, I live in the exact attendance zone of my Music for All festival. But I am so excited because that festival has a professional. It is very much focused on, by the way, Cynthia, if you're out there listening, and I hope you are, I get 20 minutes on just conducting. I get an hour, I think it's an hour. I forgot the time. I have to read and remember what this says. But my band gets all this pedagogical time and all this learning time from the clinician. And it's what's important to me. I'm not trying to beat another band. I'm trying to beat myself at my own band, being better from the day before. And I'm trying to get to level 5, level 6. I'm trying to get there, but I can't get there when I don't have sectional coaches. I'm by myself and I'm going as fast as I can with the pedagogy. Again, that's what I believe is festivals. Sometimes you have to go, but sometimes you're right. We can pick festivals based on what they do. But again, just like your podcast, though, how many of the guests that you've had on are people that the teachers want to listen to because we believe in them or we've heard of them and we want to know how they got to where they're at.
Totally. I try to have good guests for sure. Going back to the jazz festival thing, I'm lucky that I get to sort of run a jazz festival for our local association. And we have the Portland Jazz Orchestra, the Portland, Maine Jazz Orchestra, not the one that's where you are. And
I say, darn, it was so close.
We kind of model after the Clark Terry Jazz Festival at UNH, where at noon they perform for about 45 minutes. And then we always tell bands that's like what they want to be there to see. And if they're performing in the afternoon, then they come early enough to watch and then perform. Or if they're performing in the morning, then they perform and then they stay to watch and then leave. You are always at the mercy of your transportation people. So if
Yes.
you really want to stay and you can't work out a solution for it, don't feel bad. Just keep trying to do it. And hopefully at some point you can.
Yeah, it's funny you saying this is how conversations work. So you said something. You said Clark Terry. I actually, this is just to show how stories work. I got to play with Clark Terry when I was in high school. He came and played with my high school band, and that's when I learned that he found Miles Davis.
Yes.
And so like it's one of those things that had that inspiration not happened. And by the way, that was when my school was playing for every district school to get jazz more into the curriculum. It was just an experience, but I will never forget that I got to play with Clark Terry. And then he did a solo and it was on Steel and Apples. I remember that. And just like, you start playing and we didn't know what was happening because he just kind of showed up and there he was. And he started playing, and then you're like, everyone just starts turning around. You kind of get, oh, we should probably pay attention to the music that's going. But that's why I think podcasts are the same thing. You start to get stories and it connects you to something kind of like our conversation. It starts here, it goes there. But that's I think what podcasting is in a nutshell. We're talking because we don't know what we're going to get out of it, but we don't know what the audience is going to get out of it.
I actually have a thought, you say hot take, that I've been thinking about for a while regarding Clark Terry and being a band director. I mean, Clark Terry was probably the best music education, like jazz teacher in the history because of all of his constant traveling and spreading the gospel that is jazz that has to be done in person. But Clark had this famous quote that I always have to write down because I'm a trumpet player and I can't remember long words. Imitate, assimilate, innovate. I don't know if you heard that when he was there, but he always said that as a jazz musician, you want to imitate, then assimilate, then innovate. And the more and more I think about that, that's the same thing as our band directing journey, right? When you first start teaching, you're going to imitate your college band director, your high school band director. You're just going to imitate them because that's what you know. So that's not bad. People, if you're teaching for the first 5 years, don't feel bad that you are basically trying to copy what you know. At some point, you'll reach step 2 where you're assimilating, right? You're trying to take this and like change it a little bit so that you're in your program doing it the way it works for you. And then hopefully you reach that point where you can start innovating. You can maybe come up with some ideas that you do totally different. So I just love that getting better at jazz music also is the same as getting better kind of at anything, including band directing.
Oh yeah. I'll look at that comment from Cynthia. Help the directors to help the band. And I think maybe this goes back to what is the mission and vision of every festival that you go to, so that when you're going to pick those things, there's a reason, because that's where I'm at with festivals. I am 56 years old. And at this point in festival life, I know what I've gotten into. And, and speaking of building your pedagogical, house, I have what I have and I constantly build on it. And again, I said, the older I get, the less I know. That's what I've discovered. But when I'm going to the festival and I'm listening to these comments, that's what I'm asking for. How can I do it better? And that's why, like I said, you invite guests from outside to come hear your band before the festival, anything you could do. Like I love, what I love to do? Record my band and then send it out and say, what do you hear? Because you'd be shocked what you don't hear. I always tell people, I finally hear my band when somebody else is conducting it. For the first time, I will hear my band. And so those are some of those amazing things. But
You can also do that
um,
with conduct. You can also do that with conducting. You can take a video of yourself
mhm.
conducting and send it to me or you or somebody and say, "Would you critique my conducting?" If you can't do that in a festival.
Floor, door, wall, ceiling. That's all you need. That's it. That's it. I'm kidding.
Oh,
I'm
so
kidding.
people, we conduct too big. That's just it. Your band doesn't play soft because we don't conduct soft. Like we all do it. More baton, less elbow. I mean, that's just it, right? Like conduct less and your band will play softer.
You ready for my hot take on conducting? This is mine. This is my personal one. I'm not there for any other reason but to remind them what they already know.
Yep.
I am not the impetus. I am the reaction. However, if you're sight reading, whole different story. Um, now
Someone
I
once
went to that blank.
someone once told me that the conductor was the hood ornament on a Cadillac. That you're simply showing what the car is. You rip off the hood ornament and it should still be the same.
Okay, Mr. Smith, you're showing your age. To our young viewers out there, there are these things that happened on your car called a hood ornament. They haven't been there for a while. I would like one. I would. Oh, the old Rolls Royce one. I should put one on my current car. Anyway, I was thinking about that. You said student teacher, and it started me. 'Cause this is my thing. Speaking of student teaching, you know what? When you're young, do you know what your responsibility is? And I learned
Yourself.
this from teach, just teach. And you know what the second thing you worry about is? Just teach. You know what the third thing is? Just teach. Everything else pick up as you go. You got a couple years before you have to worry about other details. And of course, I'm not saying that, but think about how long have you been teaching, Mr. Smith?
22 years.
22 years. Are you different now than you were 22 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what would you tell yourself from 22 years ago?
Yeah, you don't know as much as you think you know, and that it's more about the humans than the pedagogy. Because I used to think, okay, well, here's the rep we're doing, and here are the chess pieces in my band, and I'm going to get them where we're going. But it's and what helped me a ton was having kids. The minute I had kids, the minute we had our daughter, I went back to band the first day, and it was like a whole different ball game because I literally saw this random percussionist that was a pain in my rear. I saw him as somebody's baby, and it just helped me like see the children differently than before I had kids.
Well, do you think that moments in your career of what shaped you, or do you think it's more of a holistic thing? Like, has there been moments that have completely just changed you? Because you mentioned your daughter changing you. I
Yeah.
really think there's like probably 10 moments in my life that happened that can turn me into a complete different, not just teacher, but just a complete different human.
Yep. I have one
Well, that's
more.
the agree or disagree. Go for
I
it.
do I do have one more that fits in that for sure. At what point do you keep getting better, but maybe the kids you're in front of are not getting better? I mean, I remember going through all the schooling and you're improving, and then you get into a job and they're improving, and then you go to another job, and at some point, this year is worse than it was last year, and then maybe you know what I mean, the decline for whatever reason. So how do you then square that circle with I want to keep getting better, but the students, what I'm hearing every day is getting a little bit worse for whatever reason.
Well, don't you think that COVID was a great experiment on things that definitely were not better when we got back after we had left? All those things that we had put into place in our students by the time we got back, were your students completely different by the time they got back? And how long have and I always hate to bring up COVID, and by saying that, I like using it because I think that's our relationship. What have we done this last 4 years? Because I feel like here I am 4 years into my program, and I show up to work and it feels 0% like it did 4 years ago, based upon what I had basically the 2 years previous, which was my first year back. But holy cow, I was not, there's no college in the world that prepared us for that event and prepared us. And so I go back to the pedagogy side of it. I am so thankful for experience when I got back from COVID, but I had to bite my tongue on so many things trying to get my kids to talk to each other, form
Mhm.
relationships, build a culture. I mean, this is what think about this podcast, culture before content. Trying to build a culture takes time. And sometimes it comes fast, sometimes it comes slow. But I think that's some of those things I mean, I'm not thankful that COVID happened, but I probably, speaking about knowing less, I learned about what I didn't know once I had to rebuild the band program back from scratch. And so when you say it at that point, what, your band's going to get worse. I don't think of it in those terms. I think of it as, this is this year's band, and the only band I can compare that to is this year's band. And so when, like, for example, last year I had, 22 seniors leave. And so, half the wind ensemble is completely different. And so I already go on that experience. Or, if you've ever had a lead trumpet who can play up to a G or even up to a double C, the year they graduate, it's not going to be the same the next year after. And you have to change your repertoire. You got to change your lit, or you don't, you just have to adapt. But so I think it goes back to experience it helps you get through those periods when the bands aren't necessarily better.
Yeah, I would agree. To me, another thing that really hit me as I look back at it is the introduction of social media and cell phones with every kid.
Mm.
Like, I remember the average kid and just how they were, their makeup, and then how that changed 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14. And I've even gone back to pieces that we did fantastically, and we try to do it again, and I thought the players were all in the right places, but they just didn't have the same, it just wasn't the same. So I've definitely, in growing through this podcast that I've run, it's really about trying to improve, sort of, even if something at school is kind of challenging you, we want to continue to improve through that, and not putting my self-worth as a band director associated with how my kids sound. Because that's me. My kids sound amazing. I'm a good teacher. These kids don't play in tune. I'm not a good teacher. And I try to get
it
over
goes
that.
back. What I've learned from my own community is sometimes we don't understand each other, and sometimes this is where that trust word is big, I think, in our field. And either you trust the person who's there, or you don't trust the persons that there. And so I'm at that point in my career. I trust I know what I'm doing, but if somebody doesn't feel it, or they go counterintuitive to your arguments of how you should, what are you going to do other than, I'm going to build my band to the best possible thing that I believe I know what I'm doing. But I will tell you this is like my weird final statement. I'm giving 100%, even if it feels like 2% from another person's standpoint, but I'm always giving 100%. That's who and what I am. I can only do what I can do. And that's what I celebrate.
And you want to do as much as you can today, and just focus on today. Tomorrow, focus on tomorrow, and the future will take care of itself.
All right. Are you ready for the scary comment, Mr. Smith?
Sure.
We've already almost run out of time.
I see that.
Doesn't it amazingly how fast these podcasts go? I don't, your podcast, I at least for me, every time I get into them, I can go for hours on these things. But what happens is, they go super fast. So I want you to think. I'll give you time because I know you're a trumpet player. You've already said. And so, what does culture mean to you? And I'll give you a second to think about it. And
I have a couple answers. I have a couple answers.
All right. Well, let's go for it.
To me, it's a shared experience. Whether it's riding on the bus. To me, the culture is, what do we sacrifice for each other for being in the band? Because that's one thing that's great about band. It's not about you. It's about us. You have to fit into the culture of your band program. So teaching students that selflessness, I think, is huge in creating culture. The way I created culture is just the way it worked for me. And maybe if I started over, it would be different. It was all centered around how they sound in the ensemble. Because when I came to a school, maybe the concerts didn't sound great, but the parents were used to that. Well, then the minute they start seeing that they're improving, they get the pride in that. And that when they work hard in rehearsal, all of a sudden they start sounding better. And then the positivity happens and the culture builds from there. That's what it's done for me.
Well, that's amazing. So my final thought for you, this is actually has to do with the student teaching. I believe that learning takes place in reflection. And my job as a student teacher mentor is to get my student teacher to reflect and to get them to teach. That's what their future is about, but get them to reflect on why they did things, choose things, and all those things. So to my audience out there, I really did do my master's thesis on the student teaching. I have a framework for student teaching, and it's all built on reflection, them allowing them to figure out the things that they do and don't know during the student teaching experience. So I offer that to you. I offer that to anyone. It is one of my favorite things. So Mr. Smith, I cannot thank you so much for being on the podcast. Let's talk about your socials. Let's talk about your email. Do you want to tell everyone both of those things?
Yeah, and you can find me sort of anywhere you find anything at thegrowingbanddirector.com or at the Growing Band Director. Love it if people became a Patreon member for $3 a month. That'd be fantastic, and I'm much appreciated. SmithK at westbrookschools.org if you want to reach out, or reach out on Facebook. Would love to meet with people. And if you have ideas for an episode, either for Culture Before Content or for my episode, just reach out. And I always love having people. At this point, I'm really lucky. I can't schedule anybody till summertime because things are all really booked up for me, which is pretty awesome. But the more the merrier.
Oh, I thank you for that. Well, wait, we forgot your Facebook and Instagram handles. If you want to throw those up really quick.
Yeah, the Growing Band Director, and then two of my sponsors, Excelsior Music and Austin Custom Brass. Appreciate them very much.
Yeah, they do help the world happen. Well, Mr. Smith, it has been a true pleasure, and I look forward to actually chatting again.
My man, thank you, David, very much.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.